Hey everybody, this video's been a long time coming, about my Kundalini Awakening experience. This happened about 2015, started in 2014, and it was a lot. I'd never heard of actually Kundalini Awakening. It wasn't until maybe a year after my experience that I even came across the term Kundalini Awakening, and it's very hard to talk about because it was pretty deep, right? When I look back on it now, I can see how it happened because I've learned a lot since then about spiritual related type things. In 2008, 2009 time frame, I went through a very hard time through the economic crash. That was one of the things that helped me get there. Another thing was a bad relationship I was in with a certain individual, and then had an experience with another person that I almost feel like was sent to me. So in 2014, I really had to deal with myself, right? That was related to a young lady that I was dating who was a total narcissist. I didn't know a lot about that then, but in a nutshell, what it taught me was that I had some problems myself that I need to deal with, right? You have to really look at who you are within. My question was, why was I dealing with this abuse? If you love yourself, right, it's very difficult for you to stay in situations in which you're being abused. So I really had to do some deep dives into pain, my own pain. And to this day, I still thank this person, this woman, for being in my life, because that was an important lesson to learn. And then another thing that led me to that state was really just seeking knowledge. Ever since I was a child, in the church and so forth, you hear, you go to church and they say stuff about Jesus. And one of the things that really stood out to me was not know thyself, but one of the things that is important, that's more of a Socratic thing. But in church, you learn that Jesus says, seek truth, right? So I've always been a person to seek knowledge and understanding. And later you realize that seeking knowledge inside and outside is kind of like the same thing, as above, so below. So in my journey to understand things, I really wanted to understand what this love thing was about. I came across this book called, what was it called? It's called The Road Less Traveled. Okay, and I was surprised actually. It's not only The Road Less Traveled, but it's Road Less Traveled, A Guide to Spiritual Awakening. And I'm going to refer to some books in this that really helped me, and I'm going to put links to these books in the description. Maybe they can help you. But this book really opened up what it means to love yourself. And in the process, you learn that self-love really is the key to spiritual awakening, right? Because unless you do the hard work, the psychological work, facing your fears, that's just not going to happen. You really need to look inside, and that was really the lesson I learned there. One of the other things that kind of got me to this point was a situation with my relationships. I was looking at Well, I was learning a lot about narcissism, and you learn how kind of narcissism is a reflection of negative internal vibrations. And there's narcissistic people all around us. So I spent some time with narcissists intentionally to understand myself, right? That may sound crazy because a lot of people say, you don't want to be around narcissists because they're energy drainers, which they are. But I did because I needed to learn and understand, and it really helped. As a matter of fact, there was a person that I came across, just a huge narcissist, but the goal there was really it was like spiritual strength boot camp, if you will. It was boot camp where I learned to build maybe a wall, if you will, around my spiritual energy body, to set boundaries. It was like boundary setting exercises. And really it was like maybe a 6 to 10 month process. And it was as if the universe saw that I was asking questions and seeking knowledge and understanding. And it was as if these spirit guides came to me, almost like I could feel them there. And they were giving me lessons, right? It almost felt like I was in school for spiritual understanding and self-love. Love is really the key here, right? Love is God. And in that process, you it's like the spirit world comes to you and says, hey, I'm here. I see you. And when that happens, you realize how real it is. And also what you realize is how connected you are it actually, and how connected you are to it. And it started me down a path of really seeking understanding. And I was like online all the time, Googling things like, one of the concept is called brahmacharya. That's like a sexual thing. You begin to learn and understand what sexual energy is. It's not just like, sex. It's sexual energy is a big deal. It's a very healing energy, and it's something to experiment. Brahmacharya has to do with really no longer masturbating, if you will, or having sex. It's retaining that spiritual energy within. That was a really interesting concept. Also, I came across a guy by the name of Gerald Clark, who kind of laid out what the body is in terms of like a multidimensional energetic being. You learn about your pituitary, not your pituitary, but your pineal gland, your spine. That's another thing that I think kind of helped me get to that point. I was having a lot of spine problems, right? From an accident that happened. So I was focused on doing like yoga type exercises, but it wasn't for the purpose of spirituality, so to speak. It was more my back hurt and I needed to exercise it. But I realized later that focus on my spine and health helped lead me to this. I looked at a lot of other videos from people about their spiritual awakening, and a lot of them referred to their spine and the energy at the base of your spine. And I also came across a concept that relates to what they call claustrum. This is kind of esoteric knowledge about what Santa Claus really is. That energy at the base of your spine goes through raises up to your spine, to your pineal gland, and kind of explodes. Your energy I don't even know how to explain it, but I'm going to put a link to the video about this concept in the description, so maybe some people who are better at explaining it can you can learn from that. It's difficult for me to explain. Now, a lot of these concepts kind of are in the Bible too. Now, I'm not religious. I don't do religion, right? But I'm open-minded. I want to learn from everything. And there is something to the whole Christ thing. Christ is more of, as I've learned, a reference to your oil that moves in your spine, that connects you to God and spirituality, I guess, if you will. Well, while going through all this and trying to make sense of it, I felt that my guides were like, okay, you're looking for answers. You want to know what love is. They sent to me, I feel like they sent me this person in the form of a girl, a woman, who I originally didn't have any real attract. Now, she's a beautiful woman. She's a nice lady, but I wasn't attracted to her like that, right? She was looking for a place to live, and I had a room available. We got along really well. Kind of what connected us was music, right? Techno music, if you will, and we had a good time with that. But when she moved in, we started hanging out a lot, and it was a little uncomfortable, right? Because I was concerned that we were spending too much time together. Even her friends had kind of commented that, we were a couple, which we were not a couple. There was some things about her that, for me, I wasn't interested in her that way. But kind of the lesson there was, you don't really have control of your heart. Your heart does what it wants to do. And because I was going through this awakening process and really appreciating myself and learning about self-love, what happened was, I fell in love with this woman, but it was, I'd been in love before, but not like this. This was different. And I really struggled to understand why I was feeling this way, because this was something pretty deep that I had not experienced before. It was like I loved her multidimensionally, and I even told her this. I loved her in all the ways a man could love another woman. I loved her like a sister, a daughter, a mother, just all that. And there was no sexuality involved. It was like pure, hot, white love. And it was a problem. I knew it was going to be a problem. And it became a problem because it wasn't something that I could keep inside. I remember one time I was washing the dishes and she come up into the kitchen. Our cat that we had was there. And just this, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it. Just this wave of love just washed over me. And because, she was seeing another guy at that point, and I did not want to cause any problems for her. But it was extremely difficult because the guy that she was bringing into the house was just a piece of shit. And, this young lady, she's very naive, right? And it's not my place to get involved in other people's business. And I had no intention of doing that. And it took me a lot of consideration before I felt it was reasonable for me to express my concern for her with this piece of shit guy that she was seeing. So I had two things at the time that I was dealing with. Because I loved her so much and we lived together, her bringing this piece of shit into the house just made me so filled with rage and and hatred towards this person. And I don't like to feel that way. And I knew and it was a challenge for me not to feel this way about this guy. But it was so overwhelming, I couldn't keep it inside. It was like, imagine if you're married. Just imagine if you're married, because this is the only way I can explain it, and you love your wife. Now imagine some piece of shit guy comes into your home and starts taking advantage of your wife. That's going to piss you off, right? Yeah, it's going to piss you off. And that's how it was for me. But I couldn't do anything about it. It's not my place. That's her decision. But it did become something that became too difficult for me. And, I talked with her about it, but at the same time, she wasn't very knowledgeable in, say, the ins and outs of love and relationships. And she knew herself that she had a problem with her own self-esteem, right? She had a problem with with low self-esteem and letting people into her life that weren't the best for her. And that kind of relates to why I wasn't interested in her, because she's kind of too young and naive. But nonetheless, I loved her so much. It was just ridiculous. I was like, what's going on here? But I did learn from that lesson the difference between what you think, right, and what your heart wants. They're like two different things. And it became clear to me that the power of the heart and the mind, really, that they're kind of on their own. But, that was so hard. But but as hard as it was, because to learn true love, I learned that you really need to learn true fear, right? It's fear and love. These are two opposites. One can only realize or understanding of true love if you also understand true fear. So I'm very grateful for having that huge, almost traumatic experience. So, I kept digging into a lot of different types of spiritual concepts. Universal law is kind of like the prevailing way the universe works, right? Universal law is kind of like God's law, right? And there are people on this planet who really understand this, right? Universal law. So I could say if you took Buddha, Jesus, any of the transcendent masters, they would have a lot to say about this concept. It's kind of like the core root of religion. So I don't do religion, but I do universal law, because it's like the root of everything. And then you learn concepts, or I guess spiritual teachings like Kabbalah, for example. I know a lot of people have some ideas of what Kabbalah is, like it's a negative thing, but no. What Kabbalah is kind of an expression of universal law, by Jewish mysticists. But it's really like the science of universal law and how it works. The Kybalion, the three initiates, very interesting work that helps to describe the science of, look at it like physics, right? There's different aspects of physics, but they all come under this term physics. Which is kind of like, the way physical stuff works in the universe. Universal law, say Kabbalah, is just an understanding of universal law. But I say all that to say, once you realize that the spiritual world is real, it's like now you're ready to begin consuming these works. Another thing is Hermetics, right? Hermetics is these concepts brought to us by Hermes Trismegistus. Again, I'm going to put a lot of links to these things in the description, so click below, and there's some books that I think you'll find helpful. Well, let me take a look here at one of these other books that, oh yeah, another thing that I came across, because I'm always rooted in psychology, right? The science of psychology. So one of the books that I came across was called Radical Acceptance by, what is it, Tara Brach. And that's more like along the lines of psychology, right? So when you're looking within, it's really a psychological understanding. And what I came away with from that book is how to, well, like a couple of things. One of them's meditation, right? You reach a certain, what you want to do is get into like a meditative state. Breath work is involved. That's a whole different subject too, but it's really important. Breathing in the ether, because anyhow, radical acceptance has to do with looking inside your trauma, right? Going back to that place where you say first experience pain, because you got to deal. We all have trauma. What trauma does, it opens our spirit to potentially negative forces. You kind of like doing deals. When you have trauma, you whether you know it or not, are doing deals with interdimensional parasites that come into your being. We all have an etheric field. From an Egyptian standpoint, you can call them the Ka and the Ba, related to different aspects of your energetic field. Then you come across the archons, right, which is described in a part of the Bible which was removed. What's that called? The Book of Enoch. And so just the more that you dig into all these different teachings and understandings, it really helps you to understand what you are and who you are in terms of an actual spiritual being, in connection with God, and how love and fear relate to that. And the other thing that also relates to that is knowledge, right? So it was just such a magnificent journey. All these things became crystal clear, right? And you also can see how these things relate in terms of the world that we live in. Now, I know that a lot of people have ideas of, say, who controls the world, etc. But I'll tell you, because it becomes really clearly obvious, there are people on this planet that have these understandings, right? I'm not so special. I'm really very, very happy that I learned a lot of these concepts. But what it does, it opens your eyes to really what's going on the planet. And it's a lot different than what is presented to us, say, through school, etc. Another concept that I want to bring to light is this thing called the Silva method, right? Came across a lot of stuff, and I don't want to talk about everything, but the Silva method was fascinating. It's a guy, I guess he was an engineer, and he came up with an understanding basically of this energy and how it works in terms of manifesting what you want. This is all under this concept called magic, right? If you get into magic, you learn things about, say, Golden Dawn, right? Because Golden Dawn it's like Kabbalah, but it's just a different way of understanding how you can get what you want through your own manifesting your energy to get things that you want, right? Sex magic is another concept that you learn about that, wow, people really practice this. And this goes back thousands of years all this goes back thousands of years to Egypt, essentially. And people to this day use these concepts. Unfortunately, they use them against all of us, right? These people really understand how to harness our spiritual energy. They want to keep us away from these esoteric teachings so they can take advantage of us. The big secret in the universe, the big secret on this planet is what we are in terms of spiritual, energetic beings. And, like I can say this to people and people can hear about it, but until you have this really spiritual awakening, it just seems like, like woo-woo or whatever. But I could tell you this, it is not woo-woo. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up that really convinced me of this is a concept called, it's called, what do they call it? Psychic stuff. Or, psychic stuff, I guess. I don't know how to put it, but what it does, it really proves that we are connected, right? And we're all connected together. We are all one. The government, our own government, developed techniques to help people improve or increase their psychic nature. And they call this remote viewing. And I spent some time doing remote viewing. And it is a trip. It kind of scared me, to be honest. But what it really showed me is, this stuff is real. When you're going through, and people who have gone through Kundalini Awakening can attest to this too, you get synchronicities that are just crazy, right? And Lord knows I had some just constant synchronicities. And it got to a point where I would have what I called compound synchronicities, like synchronicities within each other. Blew me away. I want to tell you this quick story about a synchronicity that I had. I met this guy through a friend, and he was over, they were over, we were just hanging out. And because I was learning so many things, a lot of times in conversations, I'll bring this stuff up. And people that know me know a lot, know that I'm kind of that guy to bring up these things, right? And that's fine. So, I brought up what I was learning as far as remote viewing. And Mike, this guy, he was like, oh yeah, I know all about that. I got books by Ingo Swann. And if you're curious, that movie called Men Who Stare at Goats is really all about those characters, and these books are real. And I've, watched their videos and learned a lot about our psychic nature through those folks. So this guy, Mike, it was great that we, when you're into these things, you don't really meet a lot of people that know these things. So when you find people, you're really excited and you want to share your thoughts and understandings about these things. So we did. But that night that I had met him, I decided to do a view, right? So, I'm in my state and I decide to pick a target, and that target to view, I wanted to pick something that I could possibly actually see in the future for confirmation, because that's part of the process. So I viewed a friend's house. Her name is Amy. And I just thought I would take a look. And I did. And I saw some things, what I saw really wasn't that important. But, after I viewed her house, the next day, I'm hanging out with some people, Mike. And Mike is kind of connected to Amy as well. And we were hanging out. And somehow, through whatever, I ended up at Amy's house for the first time. The next day after I did this view, I was like, wow. And of course, I'm in the house and I'm looking around to see how correct or incorrect, for confirmation, of what I saw. And mostly it was not correct, but some of it was correct. That's not the important part. When you're doing remote viewing, it's not critical that you're right or wrong. The point of it is that you want to continue to view. But Mike was there also. I just thought it was extraordinary to me that the view that I just randomly did the next day, I happened to be able to be at the house with the guy who I was with before, talking about remote viewing. I had a lot of those types of synchronistic experiences. I also did a remote view, also kind of a random view, that the next day there it was. I was like, wow, so okay, I was convinced it was real. You couldn't tell me differently. So I took these concepts extremely serious and just went down the rabbit hole of learning so much about spirituality and interdimensionality. And yeah, some of these things I do want to share with you. I have put some links to books in the description that have helped me. One last book I do want to talk about, teaching if you will, is called The Raw Material. The Raw Material, what's the other tagline of that? The Raw Material, can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a channeled work, and it's almost like these people who are doing this channeling are speaking directly to God. Now, this whole concept of God, you find out, is way more complicated than kind of what you teach. There are different entities in different dimensions. Ra apparently is an entity, a fifth dimensional dimensional entity that comes through this woman, and kind of like, there's so much to explain that I don't want to go off into a tangent to, but essentially can only answer questions. So there was a questioner who asked a bunch of questions about the nature of the universe, and his answers are just extremely dense, like a paragraph. You have to spend a paragraph at a time with reading, with trying to understand how he's trying to explain the laws of the universe, the interdimensionality of the universe, frequency, healing energies, all that. I highly recommend taking a read. For a lot of this stuff, a lot of people aren't ready. You kind of have to come back to it. Even the book that I mentioned before called, what was it called? Because I'm getting all this stuff confused in my head. The Road Less Traveled. If you're not ready for it, it's not going to mean a lot. This whole idea of being ready for certain works is something that relates to what's called the Zohar, right? This is more spiritual mysticism. Rabbis aren't going to necessarily recommend the Zohar to people until they're like 40 years old. Because if you're young, you really haven't lived the life and done some work that's necessary to get you to a place where any of it can make sense. The most important thing, though, is that you're seeking for understanding. Not that you have it, because a lot of people have this idea that like enlightenment is an on or off, like it's a binary. You're either not enlightened or you're enlightened. A lot of this new age stuff I just reject, because it kind of seems a little bit phony. It seems like a lot of that new age stuff is do this, do that, and you'll be enlightened. It just doesn't work that way. The reality of it is you have to work for it, right? You see a lot of this new age stuff like the law of correspondence, okay, the law of attraction. Now these are, okay, in fact, laws, universal laws, absolutely. But what they kind of forget or skip is the work, the inner work, okay, that you have to do in terms of knowing yourself, loving yourself, and then the outer work that you do in terms of loving others, understanding what unity is, understanding that power, right? This is something that I often talk about. Power is two components. that are from the mind, okay, and the heart, right? This is love, love inside, love outside, because you really can't love other people unless you love yourself. And the other component of power is knowledge, understanding yourself and who you are, and understanding the world around you. I often think that you can actually kind of grade your own self, and when it comes to knowledge. Are you ignorant or are you seeking knowledge, right? Because you don't have to know everything. The important part is, do you want to know, or do you want understanding? That's the important part. Not what you know, but do you want to know? And when it comes to love, do you want love? Do you want to love yourself? Not do you or don't you? So that power, as you increase your knowledge and understanding and love, that power gets stronger. That power is the part that powers the light within. That's a whole, I'd like to talk about Jack Kruse and his understanding of light and how it relates to our DNA. Whole different topic. I could go on for a while. But that power is what makes you shine. We often hear about these references to the inner light that comes from these two things. The vibration from your mind, the vibration from your heart. And as that grows, as that gets brighter, interdimensionally, other entities, because we're all connected to all the dimensions through this body. And when you become brighter, other entities do see you, okay? And they begin to interact with you if you allow it. And that part is really, it's a simple concept of power and light and interdimensionality, but it's very, 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 if you're there, very enlightening. And when you're on this path, right, we don't judge. It's not about like I said before, are you enlightened or aren't you? Because it seems like a lot of people say, oh, I'm enlightened. Now, do you want to go down the path? Some people don't. Some people, because it's a choice, right? Do you want to go down this path or don't you? Some people are further along in their journey down the path. Does it make anybody better or worse? That's very important. It has a lot to do with ego. Some people don't want to, which is fine. They just, happy living their lives and so forth. But it is a choice. Often what is referred to a lot of times is the movie Matrix, right? It's a choice. Do you choose the red pill or the blue pill? Obviously, with the blue pill, that kind of suggests you have no desire to learn or understand or increase your power. You just want to live your life as it was kind of given to you. There's positives and negatives to that. It's easy, On the negative side, if you choose the blue pill, you become more susceptible to being abused by people who know more than you do. You're going to be used. The red pill, the downside of that is a lot of this knowledge is really hard to process. It's not easy. In terms of like an awakening, a lot of folks refer to what's called the dark night of the soul, which you could say I'm going through now. It's not quite depression, but when you realize the difference between what's here and how life is presented to us on this planet versus what should be, it's kind of depressing. It makes you like want to wake everybody up, because when you go through this, you go, oh my God, life is so much more. It's so incredible, and it becomes really important for you to, but then you realize, you can't help bring people there. That's something that they have to decide on their own. I myself, I've gone through that, trying to explain a lot of this to people and how amazing it is, and they just look at you like you're crazy, and you realize, hey, That's okay. Just you get over it. But when you do love people, you want to help them. So it becomes difficult to just kind of keep it to yourself, keep your mouth shut, and kind of go along your business. But it gets depressing because you want to share it. It's just, reasonable when you find something beautiful, that beautiful, you really want to share it. Yeah, my Kundalini awakening was, there was a day that I I was actively trying to understand what love is during this process. And this is before they sent this woman to me. But there was a night that I went out to a show here in town to see some friends play. And this night, I had this experience of being imbued by the most positive vibe energy. It was tough to explain. I was even trying to explain to my friend what was going on. I felt this through my crown chakra that I was just really learning about. I'd had some experiences like that when it comes to ASMR, but this was overwhelming because I could feel like this flow of energy through my fingers and through my hands. And I could kind of see it too, and it was just... There was a person there at this show that I really don't get along with either. And it became really important for me to tell this person how much, and this wasn't a romantic thing or whatever, but I did know this person and she was going through stuff. She's not a nice person, right? But I wanted to let her know how much I loved her. Her name was Donna. She was at the show. And she was being a bitch because that's all she knows how to do. And I could tell that this love energy that I was giving her, she felt it. She was kind of stunned by it because it didn't matter what negative shit she said to me, that I had just was pouring love energy to her. Not that it was going to make a difference with her because she's got her own issues, but that was pretty wild. A friend of mine, Joe, he was there. He remembers me talking about that and sharing with him what was going on, because I had no idea. Kundalini and all that stuff, I had no clue about. I was kind of familiar with some magic concepts, but the word Kundalini awakening wasn't even in my vocabulary. But that night, I will never forget that night. There was two things that happened earlier that day where I was making this commitment. I was doing things to understand what this love vibration was about. And also I was listening to some soul music too. And I remember that day listening to some Stevie Wonder, and just this euphoria that was enveloping me that I had not experienced before. So yeah, later that night at this show, it was just really indescribable. But now that I look back on it, yeah, what was happening was my Kundalini energy was raising through my spine to my pineal gland, and it apparently exploded, and to where the spiritual world came to me and said, hey, you're ready. Okay, now we're going to take you down this path to get the understanding that you seek, because that's another thing that, right, say Jesus says is that seek and you shall find. And as far as all that stuff's concerned, that is true. So if you seek, you shall find. And perhaps some of the material in the description of this video, check it out. Maybe it can help you make sense of what I'm referring to. If you have had an experience like this, maybe some of these books can also help you to make sense of it. I know, I learned later that a lot of people do yoga meditation, like Kundalini meditation, to try to achieve this. And I think it's, I'm lucky in that it came to me not because I was trying to get there. Because if you are trying, there's going to be some, I think, impediments when you're trying to do something, because sometimes we look for shortcuts, and there is no shortcut to this. And I guess that's really all I want to say now about my Kundalini experience. I'm also going to include in the description some links to other people's testimonies about their Kundalini awakening, which helped me make sense of my own. I would really like it if you could comment on this if you have any questions for me. I do now definitely consider myself kind of an initiate, how would I say, like a shaman. I'm a shaman wannabe, which really only means I accept my connection to the spiritual world. I understand that I actually have a responsibility to my soul and to my spirit. That's my responsibility, and I take it very seriously. It also means that I understand that we are all one, which is true, right? The people who run this world, they know all this. You'd be surprised how much your own tax dollars have gone into various programs to not only understand these things, but to use it against us, right? There's, other than say the remote viewing program, there's what's called the Gateway Project. You can find out about that. Go to the CIA website and check that out. Maybe you've already seen some of the videos that people make about the Gateway Project, but this stuff is very real. If we all took it a little bit more seriously, that would be nice if we could do that. You know, it would be much more difficult for these cretins. I say that, but for reasons I have refrained from referring to these people in a negative way, because this evil that's on this planet has to be here. Love and evil, or I should say good and evil, if you will, have to exist. This is shown in the yin and yang, right? It's a circle. That circle spins, really. There's black and there's white, and they are integrated together. You can't have love without fear. I know a lot of people think the opposite of love, of fear, is hate, but it's actually fear. Hate, or I should say, fear begets hate. But I myself am at a point where I do appreciate evil people, right? Why? Because it elucidates good. You can't see the good without the fear. I know we like to say we hate bad people, but no. You can learn so much about the nature of God and love from these evildoers, that it's not something, it's not like, oh, you're bad and I'm good. No. I choose to be good, but I appreciate bad as well. It's another thing, kind of like, a concept that helps you to navigate down that path when you better understand the relationship between the dark and the light, right? You can't have light without dark. You can't have dark without light. So before I keep rambling, because I can go on and on forever with all this stuff, but again, let me know what you think. Hope you appreciate it. I hope you appreciate and maybe glean something from this. I'd really like to hear your comments below. And with that, I bid you adieu.